When I was in third grade, I was tormented by two bullies. And you don't have to be in elementary school to be tormented by bullies. It doesn't matter what age you are. If there are bullies in your life, it is a miserable, awful, sad experience. And I am very grateful to Mrs. Beolke because she saw that I was unhappy and I was suffering. And she took the time, like so many teachers all around the world do, to find out what was going on. She sat down, she asked me, and I trusted her, so I told her. And like all the teachers out there in the world who are doing this every single day for their students, I applaud you with my heart because you are the helpers that Mr. Rogers talks about. You are the ones who make children feel happy and excited to go back to school and keep on learning. The story I want to tell you is from Albert Lea, Minnesota. And my mother is an artist, and these are drawings that she made. The school that I went to in the story is called Lakeview Elementary, and it looks just like this. Maybe it's like one of the schools that you have gone to in your life. And my mother drew a picture of me when I was in third grade. This is me. Long hair and glasses. And this is a picture my mother drew of my third grade teacher, Mrs. Beolke. And here's the story. Mrs. Beolke. I grew up in Albert Lea, Minnesota. It's about 12 miles north of Iowa, right close to the border. It was named after a man named Colonel Albert Lea, who was sent by the President of the then United States to go out to Minnesota and make maps of all the lakes in southern Minnesota. He camped one night by the lake, and they named the whole town after him, Albert Lea, Minnesota. Now, Albert Lea, Minnesota was a meat-packing town when I was growing up. There were two big meat-packing plants, and there were a lot of meat jokes. We lived way on the edge of town where all the farmers lived, and for first and second grade, I went to a two-room schoolhouse that was on the edge of a cornfield. For recess, we ran up and down through the corn rolls for fun. But for third grade, they built a brand spanking new school right in the center of town called Lakeview Elementary. And I had to ride a school bus to and from school. Everything about our new school was brand new. The floors were shiny and slippery. If you got a good running start, you could slide all the way down the hallway on your butt if you didn't get caught. Everything had this brand new smell, even the bathrooms. But the best thing about my new school was my teacher, Mrs. Beolke. She told us that even though she was a grandmother and she'd been teaching for a long, long time, that she was so excited to be the first third grade class to ever be in Lakeview Elementary School. Mrs. Beolke was so wonderful. She had these thick black glasses that looked like cat's eyes, and her body was shaped like a pear. She had great big arms. She called them her sausages. She had great big hands. She called them her hamburger patties. And long, thick fingers. She called them her wiener fingers. Meat jokes. And 10 of us at a time could pretend our little hands were hot dog buns, and we'd each grab a hold of one of her wiener fingers, and we'd go down the hallway singing, "I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener." We loved Mrs. Beolke. We knew she liked us. I don't ever remember her yelling at us, but I do remember this. If we got a little bit too loud, all Mrs. Beolke ever had to do was put her hands on her glasses and start pulling them slowly down her nose. And if she got them all the way off her nose, we had no recess. I loved going to school until Thanksgiving. Over the Thanksgiving break, Mrs. Beolke had a heart attack, and she almost died. And back 30-some years ago, when people had heart attacks, they didn't come out of the hospital in a week. She was there for many months, and there were many times when she almost died. We wrote her so many letters. We drew her pictures. We wanted her to get well and come back and be our teacher. It was while Mrs. Beolke was away that the trouble started happening on the bus that I rode to school. I thought twins had to look the same, but the twins that rode my bus didn't. One was big, and the other one was smaller. And the twins, one of the twins was in my class. And the trouble started with some of the older kids on the bus daring the twins to go and kiss a girl. At first we were like, "Ew, get away from us. We don't want your germs." And then it got worse. The twins would drag little kids all the way to the back of the bus and try to make them kiss the dirty floor in the back of the bus. I was super little for a third grader, so I was always a target. And I had strategies. I got on the bus before they did, so I would get on the bus and I would take off my coat. Minnesota's cold, so you always have a coat. And I would put the coat over me and hide on the floor. I wanted it to look like a coat had just fallen on the floor. And I would wait and stay there until they got on the bus. I knew what their shoes looked like. So when they got on the bus and they walked down that little aisle between the seats, as soon as I saw their shoes go by, I'd quickly climb up into the seat, put my feet up on the seat. I would put my feet up on the seat because those boys were so sneaky. They'd sneak underneath the seats of the bus, they'd grab little kids by the ankle and yank them back. So the kid would smash forward and hit their head on the front of the seat in front of them. As soon as we got to school, I would race off the bus and just pray that our classroom door was unlocked. Now, if riding the school bus to and from school was bad, being outside in the playground after lunch was even worse. The parking lot where the teachers parked their cars, the gravel was brand new and it was freshly cut and it was sharp. And the bullies would grab little kids and pull them between the parked cars. The big bully would sit on the back of the kid, and the little bully would try to move their head back and forth and scratch the face up. Sometimes the older girls hid me in their coats, but I had a secret hiding place. I would maneuver my way all the way around the playground, keeping my eyes where the bullies were, and I would go to a little tiny set of bushes way on the edge, and I would hide there, and I would count as high as I could count. And I would just wait for the bell to ring when we had to go in. And then I would maneuver my way slowly back. I was always the last one in. And I got into trouble a lot of times, but I thought, you know, it's better than having my hiding place be discovered. Now, I had really good grades before Thanksgiving. But I wasn't sleeping at night. I was always trying to think of strategies. Well, if they find me over here, maybe I could do this. And maybe if they find me over here, I could do this. And my grades started going down. I know I should have told my parents, but I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and I thought my parents needed one child who didn't have any problems. I'd be lying to you if I said that was true. I didn't trust my parents. We were really, really poor, and we never, ever, ever got new clothes. But sometimes people in our church who had older kids, they would put into the boxes clothes that their kids had grown out of, and they would put them on our porch. And when we found these boxes on our porch, oh, we were so excited. We would have fashion shows. And one time, I found a shirt in one of the boxes that I'd seen in a magazine that I'd wanted, and I couldn't wait to go to school and wear my brand new shirt. And I was walking down the hallway wearing my brand new shirt, and one of the older girls came up to me and grabbed my shirt, and she said, "Oh, that shirt is so out of style. My sister wore it last year." And she and the other older girls started making up a song about me called Hand-Me-Down Clothes, and they started singing it. And when I told my mom these older girls were singing the song about me, my mother told me, just ignore them and they will stop. Well, I tried taking my mother's advice. I tried ignoring those girls, hoping they would stop. It didn't work. They sang the song louder, and a whole bunch of boys joined in, and it was just getting worse. And so I thought, if my mother tells me to just ignore these bullies, they're going to catch me for sure. So I kept that secret inside me, and I was so angry. One day the boys caught me on the bus. I got away. But when I got away, the zipper ripped away from my coat, and it was super duper cold that day. And I went to our substitute teacher, and I didn't want to go outside after lunch. I couldn't even close my coat. And I tried to tell her about the bullies, but I never talked to anybody about them before. And when I opened my mouth to talk to her about them, the words came up all mixed up. And she stopped me. She said, "Luann, you're going to be an actress. You're so dramatic. I'm sure those boys did not mean to tear your coat. It looks like your coat is an old hand-me-down anyway. Look, the thread of the zipper doesn't even match the same color as your coat. You are going to go outside at lunch. I don't want to hear another word. You will go outside and play." I went outside. I did not play. I got in my hiding place, and I cried. I thought, it doesn't matter if you tell a grown-up. They're not going to do anything anyway. And I just got so sad. When Mrs. Beolke came back, we were so happy. We held on to her hamburger patty hands, her sausage arms, her wiener fingers. We would have held on to her meatball toes if she would have let us. She told us that she was so happy to see us and how much our letters and pictures helped her get well. She told us that she was so happy to see us, she didn't even want to let us go to lunch. It was that day, on the playground after lunch, that the bullies caught me. They dragged me through the parking lot. I got away, but my knees and my tights were all ripped up and I was bleeding. And I was crying so hard in the nurse's office that the nurse sent for Mrs. Beolke. And when Mrs. Beolke stood in the doorway of that little room, she looked at me and she said, "What is wrong, Luann?" When she said that, I started to cry even harder because I thought, what if Mrs. Beolke doesn't believe me? What if Mrs. Beolke doesn't care? She didn't say anything for a long time. She just sat down on the little cot beside me, and then I could feel her hand. One hand was gently on my head, and the other one was gently squeezing my hand. And she whispered into my ear, "Tell me, Luann, I want to help you." And then I did. I told her about the bullies. I told her about the bush I held in. I told her all about the bus. And she let me keep on talking until I had no more words left in me. And when I'd said everything I could possibly say, she picked my face up in her great big hands and she looked me in the eye and she said, "No one is going to hurt you again. Not while I am watching." She told me I had to tell my parents. She was going to call them anyway, but she told me I had to get ahead of it. And you know what? My parents did not say anything about ignoring the boys. And you know what the amazing thing was? The very next day, things changed. A grown-up rode our school bus back and forth from school every day, and no child on our school bus was hurt or bullied again. And the next day at lunch, Mrs. Beolke put on her big coat, and while she was in the hospital, she knitted this big, long, red scarf, a pair of gloves, and a hat. She put them all on, and she went out on the playground with us. And teachers left and right were saying, "Mrs. Beolke, you shouldn't go out there. They'll be fine out there. You're going to end up back in the hospital again." She went out there with us, walking around, making sure that every single child was safe. And I remember one day when it was way too cold, she had bronchitis and she couldn't go outside. She stood in the big picture window inside the lunchroom where you could see in between all the parked cars in the parking lot. You can even see my hiding place. But she could see all the children on the playground, and she stayed there in the window, waving at us and watching. And you know what? I think the most amazing thing is I started to like going to school again. And it's all because of my teacher, Mrs. Beolke. She's passed away now, but I can tell you this. She's always up there. Always up there. She's always around. And she lives in the heart of every single person who sees a child being mistreated and speaks up and does something about it. She is in the heart of every person, big or small, who is watching. Thank you. I have to tell you another quick story about Mrs. Beolke. My brother Peter was very, very shy. And in those days, if your last name was Adams, you sat in the front corner of the room no matter what. And Peter, my brother, did not have any friends. One day, a new boy named Tom came in, and Tom's last name began with S. And Mrs. Beolke should have sat him, according to the rules, in the back of the classroom. But she had this inkling that Tom was really, really shy too, so she broke the rules and sat Tom next to Peter, hoping that the two would be friends. Well, they got to be friends. And they got to be such good friends that they were whispering and talking while Mrs. Beolke was trying to teach her lesson. And one day she asked both Tom and Peter to stay after school. She wanted to talk to them. And my brother Peter never got into trouble, and Tom never got into trouble. And both of them were shaking after school when they were talking to Mrs. Beolke. And Mrs. Beolke said to them, she said, you know, I know that each one of you has found a good friend, and I know how precious good friends are. And your talking is getting to be a problem, and I could put Tom in the back of the room, and I could keep Peter up in the front. But I have a feeling that the two of you would not be friends because you're both so shy. I'm going to give you a second chance, and I'm going to trust you that if I keep the two of you sitting together, that you can control your talking. Both my brother Peter and Tom vowed that they could. And I have to tell you this, Pete and Tom are still friends, and each one was the best man in the other's wedding.